rights. And as representatives of the people of Africa, it is our duty to ensure that these rights are enforced. 2016 was the year of the evaluation of the progress made and from the declarations that were made by the heads of state and government in 2010 at their conference. And we will not stop until women's rights have been enforced. And in this context, the access to land is absolutely essential in terms of the economic development of our countries and of women. And so women are in need of greater access to land to become economically autonomous. I would like to seize this opportunity, Mr. President, to congratulate the members of the different committees for the work that they have done in this respect, and in terms of the member states who have done a lot of work in terms of the Maputo Protocol. And it is time for us, as members of the Pan-African Parliament and as countries in Africa, to take our responsibilities in terms of our legislative powers and in terms of strengthening women's rights and their access to natural resources. The access of women to land is limited by various legislative instruments in different countries. So we decided that we were going to sensitize the different parliaments and ask these parliaments to request that their ministers who are responsible for agriculture and land access to facilitate greater access to women. We want to strengthen the succession rights in different countries and align them to the protocol, and ensure that draft legislation be put in place in terms of family rights and eliminate the obstacles for women in terms of the Maputo Protocol. We need to facilitate a ratification of the instruments in this respect and sensitize the members of parliament as to the situation of women in our various countries in the framework of collective action and pressure to put the protocol into action. And ratify and put in place the Maputo Protocol, organize visits and exchange visits between the different countries, strengthen the capacities of the members of parliament to ratify the instruments and put them into place, develop mechanisms in order to guide the national parliaments and evaluate and follow up the actions taken, and this should strengthen the supervisory role of the PAP through close cooperation with the governments. And we need to inform the different governments of the progress made in terms of the ratification of the protocol, and increase access to women and girls to education and training, and to have discussions and sensitization programs in order to inform the various countries of access to land by women. And I can't finish this report without thanking all the members of the committees. And we were very grateful to have the President of the Pan-African Parliament attend the beginning of our workshop. And I would like to thank all the members who committed to work very hard for the rights of women in this respect. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente, pour votre présentation.
Thank you very much for your presentation. The debate is now open. I have a list of speakers. I have a list of 15 speakers. The first is Honorable Nue Ngibanda from Burundi, Honorable Maria Ozovondo from Mozambique, Honorable Marikatu Diallo from Guinea-Conakry, Honorable Dr. Bernadette Lae from Sierra Leone, Honorable Midigras Agkok Jiambo Mabona from Kenya, Honorable Mustafa Ngandi, Honorable Said Ibrahim from Southern Sudan, the Honorable from Ethiopia, Honorable Touré from Côte d'Ivoire, Honorable Bashir Ali from Sudan, Honorable Mediatrice from Rwanda, Honorable Absha Abdullah Juma from Tanzania, Honorable Ignatian from Rwanda, Honorable Paulette Mungendi from Gabon, and the Honorable Yaou Martin Bou from Côte d'Ivoire. I would like to give the floor to the first speaker, the Honorable Moe Ngibande from Burundi. You have the floor. I would like to then give the floor to the Honorable Maria Yvonne Robsamu from Mozambique.
Bom dia, Senhor Presidente.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. My colleagues and honorable members of Parliament, thank you very much and congratulations for your presentation. My main concern has to do with the financing of the woman that is linked to agriculture. We say that they have to have access to the land, but then they have a huge concern of how to get the tools, the necessary tools to be able to produce properly while the women is working the short cable digger to be able to produce, because we know there are great difficulties not only to be property owner of land but also to get the land, because there is the patriarchal situation that only the man can have land. How can she have land without having a document for her from her husband to guarantee that she is the owner of the land to be able to be financed? I say so because some of the banks do not finance the women without having a letter from the partner, man in this case, that proves that she has the right to be able to be financed. I think this is a huge discrimination because our partners, when they go to the bank to have finance to their business and investment, both in agriculture and other sectors, the woman doesn't have to be called. So we have this huge concern to have access to the land because we need to have access to the land to be able to work it properly and to have finances. But we have the same problem because the men that still think that the owner of the land can only be a man. How can we get out of this situation? Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to the Honorable Zarikatu Diallo from Guinea-Conakry. Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to, first of all, congratulate the Honorable Hasna for her presentation on a very important theme, which is the access of women to land. And today, we can say that there have been significant progress in certain countries, but in most countries, the challenges remain very, very large, like in my country, in Guinea. Women still don't have the right to land. In most families, in terms of succession, women very rarely are granted land, and this creates serious problems. in terms of reaching the objective of making women more autonomous, they need access to this land. And so the obstacles are there. And in our countries, in order for women to have access to land, they very often have to get involved in a type of women's group, and the authorization or agreements they need to get involved in women's groups where they get financed by different organizations. But if we were to grant women better access to the land, it would be a great step towards making women more independent. And to do this, we need to have a synergy between the Pan-African Parliament and the national parliaments in the context of the promotion of women's rights, and this in order to overcome the challenges we have. Thank you very much. I give the floor to the Honourable Bernadette Laye from Sierra Leone.
Mr. President, honourable members, I want to thank the presenters and the two committees for hosting this important workshop. Of course, the issue of women's land rights has been a recurrent topic in this parliament. Every time we have had the conference for women in this parliament, we have also made it topical, and the AU has also made presentation for us in this parliament on the AU land policy, and again the issue of women's rights was topical. So I think this is a topic that we are going to continue to talk about until the status quo has changed. So anytime we talk on the issue, we are breaking the silence, and we are also attacking the systems, the structural systems, the regulatory systems that still constrains women's access to land. Mr. Speaker, honourable member, land is one of the most important factors of production, and especially for Africa, where two situations exist. One, Africa economy is based on agriculture. Number two, Africa's economy, especially the agriculture, has been classified as female farming system par excellence. In a situation like this, and when women continue to be the traditional people responsible for household food security, how can we deny them the basic factors that will help them to contribute to this traditional role? If women don't have complete access to land, then they cannot invest. We have a lot of new technologies in agriculture, improve agricultural practices, but you can only invest if you have a long-term ownership and control over land. That is why Africa still continues to grapple with food security. How are we going to feed Africa when that target group that is responsible does not have the wherewithal to do so? So we must insist that we must move from these rhetorics to practicalizing women's access to land through constitutional changes, through amendment of our laws, through also bringing in on board the men themselves, who are also part of the problem. Mr. Speaker, honourable members, after this session, let these reports go out into our national parliament. Let it be topical. We don't just want to come and start and talk about it here and leave it. Let us try to start operationalizing our own recommendations from outside of this parliament. I thank you, and God bless us all.
Thank you very much. I would like to give the floor to the Honourable Millie Grace from Kenya.
Millie Grace.
Honourable Millie Grace from Kenya. I give the floor to the Honourable Mustafa Gandhi from Egypt.
La parole à l'honorable.
Give the floor to Honourable Said Ibrahim from Sahrawi.
Parole à l'honorable.
Give the floor to the Honourable Sitaye Tizazu from Ethiopia.
President, and I thank you for Honorable Sophia for Hasna for her presentation. I confused the two Djiboutian ladies. Sorry. First of all, I appreciate this topic, which is very important and necessary for not only for women, for all Africans. What happened? So,
Chers collègues, vous savez que notre
Dear colleagues, as you know, mobile phones are not allowed in the chamber, and I please ask you to respect our internal regulations. Honourable member from Ethiopia, you have the floor.
Thank you again, Mr. President. I think this topic is very important. I don't believe that there is no a topic above this, which is access of land for women, which is, as we Africans are depend on agriculture, and agriculture is made on land. So the proper use and proper distribution of land is very important. And if we are economically empowered, and if we have our own to manage, it is the main thing which we bring to independent in all areas, in all aspects. We can be confidentially participating in all areas if we are economically independent. This is one thing. So to build any nation great, there should be equal use of land, which is a very important and the very necessary thing, which is the land. If you take my country, land is for the people and for the government. It is in the policy of my government. So the land is divided equally with women, and land not owned by legislation. It is practically. If a man and a husband and a wife has equal right on their own land, they are equally registered in their own area of government. So they are equally responsible to use, responsible to share, and anything on land. If there is a divorce between them, they equally share the land, and it has its own. And you can surprise that women are highly needed due to their land, even in my country, because they are independent. They are using their own land. So I suggest that in this PAP we have to use this session or the next workshops, if it's prepared, to share our own experiences. I believe that each and every African country has their own good experiences. So we can share our own experiences and we can build Africa, not simply by saying that one Africa, one voice, simply talking here and there. It should be start on practice. We have to share our experiences, good experiences between us. I believe that this will be a good opportunity to go forward. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I'd like to give the floor to the Honourable Daouda Touré from Côte d'Ivoire. The floor goes to the Honourable Bashir Al-Batani from Sudan.
La parole est à l'honneur.
The floor goes to the Honourable Bari Media. Oh,
Excusez-moi.
please excuse me, sorry.
من السودان. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. شكرا سيد الرئيس وشكرا للأخت مقدمة الورقة الأخت الموقرة. وأقول إن الاهتمام بالمرأة.
I would like to thank the presenters who presented the report. And if we really want our societies to develop, we have to give a lot more importance to women and to women's rights, particularly in terms of land rights and they have to be protected by all forms of legislation. There are some traditions and customs that have deprived women of these rights. In Sudan, we have had some good experiences, and we hope that these experiences will be emulated by other countries. In our country, women have full rights to own land, and they have full rights in terms of owning land and property. And our state created institutions to help finance women's projects and to help women to invest in agriculture in particular and develop their activities. And women have easy access to these institutions, and there are even funds available for women. And there is the Family Bank that provides funding and loans to women to develop their businesses. The state decided also to award 14 to 15% of funding to women's businesses, so to participate up to 14-15% in these women's projects, and we would like other African countries to emulate. Thank you. I would like to give the floor to the Honourable Mediatrice from Rwanda.
Marie Mediatrice.
Marie Mediatrice is not in the chamber. I give the floor to Asa Abdullahi from Tanzania.
Asante sana.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I thank Almighty God for today, for enabling me to speak for the first time in this August Pan-African Parliament. Let me congratulate the presenter, Honorable Asuna. This presentation is very important, and it has been well understood. It is the question of land for women is very important because it is the one which touches the life of everyone. To own land is a liberation to women, because women are the producers. They have the important role of taking care of the family, the education, and also taking care of the health of the community. But at the same time, there are many barriers for women to own land. As we know, agriculture is the backbone for development and make sure that the environment is in good condition. We have the Maputo Protocol, which stands for the development of women, and make sure that the women participate in their own development. But still, the implementation of this Maputo Protocol is still so moving. You might find in some of our countries, we have not put an emphasis on helping the women to milk land. Sometimes you will find women who are supposed to inherit land, but they are denied that right. And still there are no instruments that support the right to own that land. How can we empower these women to be stronger in agriculture so that they can have training and loans? I think that our parliament should give priority to help women, and with all this, we should have more training so that to enable women to empower themselves. On the education side, the own way of helping girls in education. It will help girls. If most of our girls would have enough education, they will be able to fight for this. Microphone on dakika moja. Let me congratulate my government, which has provided free education from primary to secondary level for this free universal education, and these women and girls will be empowered so that they will be able to stand for their rights to own land. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Let us continue to fight for women's rights. Thank you.
Very much. The floor goes to Ignatian from Rwanda. Nira Rugundu from Rwanda. Thank you, Mr. President. I should like to thank the chairperson of the committee for the report and the presentation. My intervention is about the fact that we don't really feel very, very comfortable to talk about women's rights as if women were not whole beings. But it is so, and we need to talk about it. We also ask ourselves when this debate will be closed, because since 1948, everyone knows that men are born equal amongst themselves. Why is it that women do not have access to land? They are citizens. What is the problem? Do women not have the capacity to own land? I should like to ask the question to parliamentarians. In conferences such as this one, can we find out which countries have laws that are discriminatory? And why do parliamentarians not set up legislation that protects everyone and gives rights to everyone, men, women, boys, girls, so that everyone enjoys the same rights? And in that way, we would know where to start. All it requires is legislation. 50% and 50% for men, 50% for women. That would allow a daughter to inherit from her father. I don't know. It is quite complicated to understand, I think. And I should like to ask members of parliament to issue legislation concerning rights for everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Paulette Nungengi from Gabon. The floor goes to Yao Martin Bouy from Côte d'Ivoire. I pass. Thank you. Thank you. The floor goes to Honorable Agnès Luzuba from South Sudan.
Honorable members, I also wanted to add my voice to all those who have spoken about the land. Indeed, land is very important. It's one of the capital and it is economic resource. Many countries in Africa, from what I have been hearing, women have no access to land. And this is sad because in many countries, women are the subsistence growers. They are the ones producing the food to feed the families. And they are impoverished. If they are accessing the land and they are supported, I think poverty also should have been reduced. In my country, South Sudan, women have access to land. But that is a traditional practice which is handed over in generation. But as things progress and people develop, it should be legalized, because sometimes when changes come, you will be denied your right to land tenure. So like Ethiopia who have access to land, I think one of the way forward should be those countries who have access should be legalized, and the policies, make sure that our governments have the policies to support women in higher productivity. Because even if, like in my country, you access the land and you are not supported, your productivity is, you don't have for economic or for extra money. So these are some of the issues that we should also see when we are talking about this access to women access to land. Thank you, Mr. President.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. The floor goes to Honorable Mboni Mohammed from Tanzania.
Thank you, Honorable President. I just wanted to contribute a bit on this, and it starts by the change should actually start with us. In this August body, we have MPs and senators, of which most of us have the responsibility to make laws.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Thank you. The general debate on this subject is closed. Honorable Aslam Mohammed, you have the floor to respond to questions asked. Thank you. Come to the front, madam.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, I thank you very much for all your comments and your recommendations. Mr. President, since there were no questions and there were rather recommendations and exchanges of experiences given by my colleagues, I should like to thank you once again. In fact, what we need is involvement from everyone, every single parliamentarian, so that women have access to land. It is an advocacy that requires involvement from each and every one of us in our national assemblies, and also the implementation of this protocol. Women will have all these rights if this protocol is implemented. Mr. President, I should like to ask you to give the floor to the Vice Chair of the Committee on Agriculture so that more explanations and comments must be given. Honorable Jawla. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you to all of you. Honorable Jawda, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I know the land access to give it to women is a fundamental right enshrined by the EU protocol. When you look at the provisions that are enshrined in the protocol, especially on Article 19, 15, and 21. It is true that, well, in Africa, most of the land that are accessed by men are predominantly occupied by women, but women are not given the rightful use to use their land rights. And I believe the protocols has enshrined properly to need for women to use these lands. That is why we had the joint collaboration with the committee to look into these matters so that at least women have more access to land. And there are also legislative powers that are also given to in various parliaments. We could also try to, various parliaments should also try to ensure that women are given more access to land so that at least this controversy is gone forever. And secondly, Honorable Speaker, today in Africa, most of the lands, as I've said, are predominantly cultivated by women, and as such, women should have massive access to the land in that manner. So therefore, I supported the Honorable Madam, for moving this motion and having this joint committee to have that motion. I thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. This was comments on the report. No comments, no observations. The report is adopted. The Claw, I should like to give you the floor so that you can read the next item on the agenda. Presentation and debate on the workshop on e-governance. Dauda Toure, chairperson on the Committee of Transport, Science and Technology, to make his presentation. Thank you.
Mesdames, Mesdemoiselles,
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. First of all, I should like to apologize to you all because we were supposed to be presenting first. We did not do that because the documents were not translated in all the official languages of the African Union, so we apologize for that. I'm going to read to you the report of the workshop on e-governance entitled Challenges for Parliamentarians in Africa. It was a case study and also a sharing of experiences, and that happened on the 1st and 2nd of March 2016 in Committee Room 1 here at the Pan-African Parliament in Midrand. The context. Rule 28 of the Protocol of PAP says that the PAP must work in close collaboration with the parliaments of regional economic communities and any other national legislative organ. I think that you do know that. It is Rule 18. And it is in this context that the PAP, through its Committee on Agriculture, Industry, Communications, Energy and Sciences and Technology, organized a workshop on the 1st and 2nd of March 2016 on e-governance. Challenges of parliamentarians in Africa, a case study, etc. The workshop handled sharing experiences of certain countries having adopted e-governance and online services. Obviously, we started with welcome remarks. Members of the Committee on Agriculture, Industry, Communication, Sciences and Technology, Honorable Toure Dauda, your humble servant. In fact, it is Toure Dauda. Toure. We welcomed the members present at the workshop. We welcomed the experts as well, and we told them that it was necessary to adopt e-governance in order to improve governance on the African continent. We gave a brief summary at the beginning of the workshop about the experiences on e-governance. At the official opening, the chairperson joined us, and His Excellency Roger Nkududang join us, the President of the Pan-African Parliament. His Excellency Roger Nkududang welcomed all participants and expressed the fact that he was satisfied to see the commitment of the members in attending this conference despite their heavy schedule in their respective countries. In his intervention, he specified that it is only through good communications and collaboration strategies that are efficient with all stakeholders that PAP will be able to attain its objectives, adding that his bureau was delighted to help on this matter. Thank you very much, Mr. President. We are now going to go to the presentation of the sub-themes and the debate. The workshop was subdivided in 5 sections. Presentations given during these 5 sections were on the following subjects. 1. We will speak about the presentation of NEPAD concerning e-governance. We were visited by Dr. Towela Nurenda Jere, representative of information technology of NEPAD. She gave a presentation on the way in which NEPAD views e-governance. She informed the members that the efficiency of e-governance and governance by internet, that was all linked to globalization. She told us that we live in a world where everything is online, and it requires that every single person be attentive to the way in which this issue is handled. She let the members know that the role of NEPAD was to facilitate and coordinate continental and regional.
Assurer de l'appui du NEPAD dans
أكدت الأعضاء
en estas áreas de
nécessité d'accélérer
to accelerate the rhythm of development, harmonization of legal and regulatory frameworks, awareness and capacity building that are imperative, political will that must be matched by investment, and driving the NEPAD's agenda how to leverage African technical and financial resources. Secondly, we will speak about the presentation on e-Council in Algeria. Abdelrazak Eni visited us, who is Director General of the Modernization of Documentation and Archives in the Ministry of Interior and Local Government in Algeria, explained how the systems are used in developing the online national identification registration in Algeria. He informed members that Algeria promotes training in internet services in schools, which has enabled them to have a large population which can now use eServices. Most of the programs for eServices are pioneered in schools, and thereafter they are rolled out in administration. He emphasized that in order for the continent to develop, there is need to benefit from the expertise of each and every one, and reiterated that Algeria was ready to share its experience with the rest of Africa. Thereafter, we had another presentation on online and distant learning, e-learning in other words. Another experience on online and distant learning was shared by Professor Amar Bala, who is a member of the Post and Telecommunications Regulatory Board and professor at the Advanced School of Computer Sciences of Algiers. Professor Bala outlined the process of how they handle e-learning in Algeria. He informed members that a big population which cannot make it to class enjoy the facility, and this has led to the increase in percentage of people who had access, and these people were informed of e-services, and e-learning is one of them. He informed members of the opportunities available in the National Computer School of Algiers, which African countries can use. He further urged the Pan-African Parliament through its members to carry the message to their national parliaments. He stressed the need to jump on the bandwagon to create collaborative e-learning projects on the continent. We then had a presentation on the challenges of e-commerce, and we spoke about the case of Tunisia. Mr. Hassan Drif, consultant, expert, and senior management in e-commerce and technology innovation in Tunisia. He is a director of a company, shared with the members how far Tunisia has developed its commercial sector by using e-services and the challenges the country is facing. Tunisia has more than 3,000 companies that do online business and trading. He said that in Tunisia they are emphasizing the use of electronic payments and also encouraged business people to use e-commerce when doing business. He pointed out that the state contributes towards the businesses of people who engage in e-commerce as an incentive to encourage people to use e-commerce. However, he mentioned the following challenges: limited infrastructure. He urged the African Union to help with building infrastructure in order to improve and promote e-commerce on the African continent, whereby products from, example, Chad, Algeria, could be made known outside Africa. Popularization of e-commerce. E-commerce needs to be popularized so that it can attract more people who commit to using it. Thereafter, there was a presentation on the synthesis on national policies in the ICT field. Mr. August Dianke from the AU Commission gave an overview on national ICT policies. He defined the ICT policies as measures and courses of actions adopted by governments to address ICT issues or strategies developed and put in place by public bodies that will enable them to transform their economies into information and knowledge economies. He highlighted the national ICT policy structure to include their vision, goals and objectives, timetable, resources available, and monitoring, evaluation, and review. He gave the example of Seychelles as one of the countries with a national ICT policy. He informed members that African governments are at different levels of establishing policy instruments and legislative frameworks. He further pointed out that while many countries have suggested legislations, the level of implementation of ICT policies, both at national and regional levels, remain low. We also had a presentation on parliamentary communication. Effective parliamentary communication was cited as a key in promoting e-services. This was highlighted in the presentation on parliamentary communication, which was done by Honorable Professor Mohamed Tayeb Lasri from Algeria, who is here. He is an expert. He informed members that there is a need to have a communication plan where we can communicate efficiently and in a transparent manner. He explained the rules of communication vis-à-vis a communication in Parliament. He put emphasis on the following: the type of communication from parliaments, most especially when there are two sides, i.e. the opposition and the ruling party, means and ways of communicating on social network, the necessary tools required, and how parliaments would wish to share with the governments, the need to have a communications policy in all parliaments, and that parliamentary communication is an obligation that should be fast, speedy, simple, and personalized, and should put the parliament to the fore. Maybe there are members of parliament here who have Twitter accounts. Anyone? Maybe 2 or 3. 8 out of 100. Thank you. You see that there are not many parliamentarians here that have access to social media. Is there anyone here who has a website? Here. Do you have a website? Thank you. 6 people, maybe 9. I think that everyone here should have a Facebook page. It is mandatory. You have Facebook account, don't you? Yes. Thank you. Very well. That was to say that parliamentarians do not really use social media that are very important instruments. We will go back to that. Then we had the presentation on the experience of Estonia in the field of electronic governance. Estonia has 1,300,000 inhabitants. It's a very modern country. It's a small country in the cold Nordic neighborhood. We had a presentation from Mr. Ari Laponen on the experience of Estonia. It's a small country. He informed members that Estonia has an internet penetration of 78%, and I repeat, 78%, with a fully functional e-government infrastructure. He said that they have a 16-year experience of e-service providing, and since 2005 they have been using i-voting in all elections, and 96% of personal income tax statements are submitted online. He further informed members that they have achieved this because they used education as a vehicle to enable them to reach the stage where they are by supporting ICT in schools. Mr. Laponin informed members that we are confronted with a new reality where ICT usage is not a hobby nor a tool, but a major building block of that reality of daily life. He urged countries to work on new principles in order to meet the challenges. After the workshop, the members gave the following recommendations.
Mindful of the delay shown by Africa, despite having a high ICT penetration, is lagging behind, and there is a low ICT penetration. And mindful of the lack of interconnection infrastructure among African states, mindful of the absence of an African comprehensive policy, the Committee on Transport, Industry, Communications, Energy, Science and Technology recommends as follows. In the aim of benefiting from the experience of countries such as Algeria, Tunisia and Estonia, with great headway in the modernization of their administrations and taking into account the role of the African Union in the coordination and harmonization of ICT policies at the regional and national levels, bilateral and multilateral cooperation must be encouraged and supported to take as reference the practical experiences of these countries in terms of e-governance, so as to help the countries lagging behind in the field to develop the analog tools for an electronic and modern administration. Taking up again the former project of creating the African Virtual University, which was abandoned, and making it as a reality, as many of the African countries have set up the ICT infrastructures that did not exist when the project was launched. The third recommendation is that the African continent is lagging considerably behind in terms of trade flow and particularly inter-African trade. African products and services lack visibility, and African SMEs are not capable of standing up to competition from the other continents. African governments absolutely must help their local firms move on to the digital economy. The promotion of African products can succeed only through the creation of online marketplaces for made-in-Africa products. The fourth recommendation. The Pan-African Parliament is called upon to advocate effectively to the government authorities of their respective countries to obtain the signature and ratification of the AU Convention on Cybersecurity and Personal Data Protection, and the development of national legislations on cybersecurity and creation at the national and regional levels. We need to put in place computer emergency response teams and computer security incident response teams. 5, national parliaments, and mainly the Pan-African Parliament, should develop a real parliamentary communication policy. Indeed, for all contemporary parliaments, whatever their age and the extent of the means they can use, communication is a democratic and institutional imperative. The public demands more access to all the government institutions, including the Parliament, and wants them to be transparent and efficient and accountable. In order to have an effective parliamentary communication, national parliaments are invited to obtain a web portal for a higher visibility of their parliamentary activities by the end of 2016. I emphasize, by the end of 2016, we should have web portals in our parliaments. Yes, we can. We can do it. Yes, we can, as indicated by Barack Obama. We should do this by the end of 2016. To conclude, the chairperson, on behalf of the members, I thanked the members, the presenters, for their presentations, and also thanked the Pan-African Parliament, which organized the workshop. They promised to follow closely on the recommendations they come up with during the workshop, and to also ensure that a PAP organizes a continental conference on e-governance, which will involve people from all over the continent. Also guests from around the world who have an experience on e-governance. The chairperson also thanked the members who made an effort in attending the workshop and urged them to share the information they got with the people in their respective countries. I hereby submit. That's, ladies and gentlemen, a brief report on the workshop that was held on the 1st and 2nd of March. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
I thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. The general debate is open. I have a list of 19 speakers. Honorable Martin Niteretse, Honorable Bisiri Semira, Honorable Enasien Nyarokondo, Honorable Abdullah Barkat Ibrahim, Honorable Sekou Fantamadi Traore, Honorable Mohamed Tayeb Laskri, Honorable Bashir Ali Mohamed El Batani, Honorable Noé Bonigaba, Honorable Eugène Fala Parkar, Honorable Evelyn Biote, Honorable Zalikato Diallo, Honorable Donio Kone, Honorable Ali Awadala Ali, Honorable Paramount Chief Baikur Kanagbaru, Honorable Aissatou Saud Diawara, Honorable Jacqueline Mohuyon Gayere, Honorable Hashim Idris, Honorable Dr. Bernadette Lahaye, Honorable Abdurazak Saad Namdas. I give the floor to the first speaker in my list, who is Honorable Martin Niteretse from Burundi.
My name for speaking in this debate.
On vous inclut, madame, ça n'a pas de, il n'y a pas de problème. C'est une...
No problem. You will take note of your name. No problem. You are now in the list.
Merci. 20 inscrits. Le dernier dans la liste, c'est l'honorable Kéliane Santoche de l'Afrique du Sud. Oui, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Excellence, Honorable President.
You have the floor, sir. Thank you. I thank the presenter for his presentation. My commentary will raise a concern with the presentation made. The development of ICTs in Africa is the real hope of everyone. But I notice that we have a problem in some African countries where we notice repeated power cuts. I wonder how we are going to develop ICTs in the absence of power supply in the continent. There was a presentation by Minister Boro with regard to COP21. We had a number of promises. COP21, the conclusions of COP21 were in favor of the development of the electricity and energy sector in Africa. I think it would be better, Mr. President, to follow up the issue of electrification in Africa. All the resources are there, but implementation is problematic. Thank you, dear colleague. I give the floor to Honorable Bissiri Semera from Burkina Faso. My name is Sirima Bissiri. Sirima Bissiri. That's always my name is always an issue. It's Sirima. Thank you. Thank you, dear colleague. I give the floor to Honorable Ignatienne from Rwanda. Thank you, Mr. President. I thank the chairperson of the committee. I would say that the use of e-services in our parliament is starting slowly but surely. With regard to recommendation number 3, which talks about trade flows and inter-African trade, I think that the problem is not the manner in which people can sell products. The problem is that we do not produce enough. E-services can help us modernize companies. I don't know any single country in Africa which has a product surplus and does not have markets. I'm not certain. But what is lacking in Africa is the following. We tend to live with less, whereas we can produce more and enrich our economies. With these modern tools, we can produce more, and the market is tremendous. We have 1 billion consumers in Africa. I may be wrong. We have a large size of consumers. Let's produce more, create trade flows. But we need to produce more to meet the needs of African consumers. I thank you, dear colleague. I give the floor to Honorable Abdullah Barkat Ibrahim from Djibouti. Thank you. I pass. Now I give the floor to Honorable Sekou Fantamadi Traoré from Mali. Thank you. She's not in the chamber. I give the floor to Honorable Mohamed Taib Laskri from Algeria. Thank you, Mr. President. Of course, I'm a member of this committee. I put my name in the list to consolidate what Honorable Dauda said in his presentation in presenting the report of the committee. In the previous days, we talked about corruption, mismanagement, and the need for good governance in African countries. This is a very powerful tool that will enable us to fight against red tape and bureaucracy and corruption. This tool will enable us to highlight good governance within national governments. In fact, African states and governments are called upon to modernize their administration to be closer to the citizens and to get rid of red tape. Governments must earn the trust of citizens with more transparency in management. As rightly indicated by my colleague Dauda Toure, Africa is lagging behind. Africa is lagging behind on the basis of a classification established by the United Nations. This classification takes into account the index of good governance. The first country in Africa is lagging behind at the world level. I think that Seychelles is classified as number 1 in Africa, or Cape Verde, I'm not sure. Each African country is moving forward, but each African country is moving forward on the basis of its own pace and on the basis of its own national policy. But we also indicated that there is the absence of a continental policy in the area of using ICTs and e-management and the modernization of our administrations. As I indicated, each country in Africa is moving forward on the basis of its own pace. Some countries, some governments put in place ministries of ICT, such as the case of Algeria or others. But there are others who do not have such ministries. We need to have a national policy, and we need to have a ministry that is in charge of ICTs in the country to carry out a national policy. The case of Estonia was raised. I would like to raise the case of Lithuania, a very tiny country indeed. Lithuania is a very small country, and it is used as a reference by the most developed countries. In its constitution, it is clearly indicated that access to internet is for all and free. So there is this provision in the constitution, free internet access. The last issue is that the parliamentary democratic approach is important, and parliaments are accountable to citizens. If we want parliaments to be visible, all parliamentary activities, irrespective of the nature of the activity, must be accessible online, and in this way the citizens can participate and can express their opinion. The solution is clear. We need to use ICTs, and that's the solution, and that's the way forward to make parliamentary activities visible. We also want PAP to be the best example in parliamentary communication. We don't simply need to communicate, but we need to communicate well. I thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. I give the floor to Bashir Ali Mohammed Al-Batani from Sudan. You have the floor, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I thank the presenter of the report. This report is very important indeed, because it is related to the development of the continent. Mr. President, dear colleagues, we are endeavoring to enhance productivity and benefit from the major resources available to us in Africa. And to do so, we need to compete in marketing our products around the world. Electronic trade is now an important need, and we need to trade, we need to sell our products around the world. And we need to develop e-governance. And to be able to do so, we need to develop our own networks. This is related to globalization and the development of ICTs. Therefore, it is urgent to provide the new technologies, and we need to build our capacity, the capacity of the people who use these technologies. Therefore, I see, Mr. President, that PAP should adopt a detailed and specific program to assist African countries technically and financially in this area. I also think that there is a need for our union to adopt a program to lift the boycott against African countries, such as the case of Sudan. This boycott is preventing the African countries from accessing new technologies and to deal with international banks. I thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. Now I give the floor to Honorable Noé Mbonigaba. You have the floor. Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the floor. I thank the presenter of this report. As a participant in that workshop, I will wish to contribute to some to the understanding of some challenges. The first challenge is the presentation itself. It deals with awareness building in the area of ICTs. But I notice that the presentation is very relevant, and the participants in that workshop were not many. I advocate here that PAP ensures that such reports, which have a continental importance, have to be useful to all parliamentarians. The workshop should aim at attracting more parliamentarians. I also wish to suggest the circulation of the presentations electronically. Another challenge, Mr. President, is electronic voting. If ICTs have to be developed in Africa, and as indicated by the theme, there is the issue of elections, and these elections are raising a great deal of litigation, and we have not been able to settle the issue so far. Another challenge highlighted is distance education. Education is at the heart of development, but for the time being, Africa is witnessing a deficit in the area of virtual education. We advocate here that PAP contributes to the development of eServices. But for that, we need more sustainable energy. I thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, dear colleague. I give the floor to Honorable Eugene Fala-Parakar from Liberia.
Mr. President, thank you very much for giving me the floor. I would like to compliment Mr. Dauda Traore, who presented, Toure, sorry, who presented very well on the concept of electronic governance. I think the issue of electronic governance is key in the advancement of our society. There is no doubt. But the only deficit we have is that Africa, as a continent, is still lagging far, far behind in terms of information technology. For example, in the Western world, if you went ahead to campaign on the net, most of the electorate will listen to the messages. But in African countries where most of the population is rural, if you depend on Facebook, Twitter to run your campaign, at the end of the day, you'll be a very big loser. You have to roll your sleeves to trek on foot from hamlet to hamlet, from village to village, so that you can win. This is a very good concept. In fact, in my place, there was a fellow who came from the West who wanted to be an MP. And he went with his laptop and projector from village to village. You know, at the end of the day, the technology was strange to the people. They could not conceptualize what he was talking about. At the end of the day, he lost big time. And so, electronic governance is good, but I think it will take Africa a long time. We need to invest in it. For example, in this chamber, in this hallowed chamber, oftentimes we have voluminous documents. I mean, I feel so sorry for us. If we had tablets, for example, placed at every desk, at the end of the day, if there are documents, those documents are placed straight in our tablets and we access it right here. And it will cut down, on the finances, and it will cut down on labor. And so I think if we are talking about electronic governance, we need to start it right here. We as leaders of Africa. The other thing that I would like to talk about
More 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. The other thing I would like to talk about is the issue of education. Education is very important. And nowadays, instead of ordering books, that will cost you a lot to carry. For example, if you are going back in your country, you can use the net. You can use electronic libraries. Because the libraries we have having books on the shelf are archaic. They are antiquated. But in Africa, we don't have energy. Energy is a problem. How many countries in Africa have stable energy? That is a problem. So for us to realize electronic governance, we need to invest in energy, we need to invest in education, and we need to spend some money. And so most of the monies that are going through illicit financial flows by our leaders in other countries, we can save those money to invest in the education of our children. And if we do that, the better it is for us to realize electronic governance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now I give the Butoi from Burundi. Not in the chamber.
Merci.
Thank you, Honorable President, for giving me the floor. Just like my predecessors, I wish to congratulate the presenter. Honorable President, when I read the report, I thought that this would deal with the strategy of how to benefit from ICTs as Pan-African Parliament. I'm sorry, I will have to repeat what my predecessor emphasized. I asked the question of why not benefit from ICTs so that we can use intranet and internet. The papers we received should help PAP to provide us with computers and access to the internet. I see that half of MPs have their own laptops, and we could have received the documents via the net. we could save on this and do something else. I wish to seize this opportunity to share the experience of my country, Burundi. We have an ICT ministry, but we have this problem of power supply. Our parliament, our senate, and our ministries have portals and websites. We are in social networks. We have Twitter accounts and Facebook pages. We are also on YouTube and Flickr. So we are fairly advanced. The mobilization of parliamentarians needs to be undertaken. And as a member of PAP, we need to be an example so that MPs in our countries could emulate this example. The use of social networks will help us more. We can communicate more information about our meetings, and this will have a major impact, I think, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to the Honourable Zalikato Diallo from Guinea-Conakry. Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the floor. I would also like to congratulate Dauda Toure for an excellent presentation, especially on a theme that is so important at the moment in the world as we know it. I would have liked to have participated in this workshop, but unfortunately in our committee we had another program, and so I would like to support my colleague from Burundi to say that these kinds of workshops should be open to all parliamentarians. Today, we are evolving in a world where everything is linked. And this means that sooner or later, e-governance, the parliament online, all government services being online will be absolutely essential. And so we need to make sure that we are ready for this so that we are at the same level as other countries. Because on the international level, it shows that the first country in terms of e-services in Africa is Cape Verde, followed by the Seychelles. So a lot of us have to catch up. And I had some questions on the strategies so that African countries can reach the same level as other countries in terms of ICTs. And I would like to add to what was already said in the presentation. I think that the PAP needs to urge national governments to include the strengthening of capacities of members of parliament in terms of ICTs so that they can use e-government services and promote them. We will use less paper and save our forests. I would like to give the floor to the Honourable Digon Kone from Côte d'Ivoire. Thank you, Mr. President. I would also like to congratulate the speaker on an excellent presentation and for all the work that was done by this committee. However, Mr. President, I was expecting for the committee to give us more detail on the strategies to follow with regards to ICTs. What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? And what are the best practices? How e-services have helped in terms of fighting corruption and other important subjects. This workshop could have served as an experience sharing opportunity for people to share the experiences of their governments. But I would like to know, what are the measures that have been put in place by African countries in terms of investment, infrastructure? We talk about optical fiber, and what have these countries done in terms of integrating the ICT technologies and offerings of their countries? And we spoke about the example of Tunisia. The other concern that I have is that I have the same dream as other people, such as Emlyn, such as my colleague from Liberia. Maybe we ate the same thing yesterday, that we are dreaming about the same things. But in my dream, I see... and I would just like to say that if there are any similarities with any parliamentarian here, it's a complete coincidence. In my dream, there is a parliament that starts an hour late, where we have a ton of paper that we receive, and I can tell you I'm not taking this paper with me because otherwise I will be overweight in terms of my luggage. And in this dream, somebody woke up and decided to put all of these documents on the internet, or an intranet system, like my previous colleague said. And I would like to congratulate the Honourable Mwanda, who every day sends us reports and updated documents via email. Sometimes it's a day or so late, because sometimes we are in the middle of debating a topic when we receive the documents. But it's never too late to do a good job. Thank you very much. Please, if you would allow me to finish, Mr. President. In my country, we don't believe that dreams are impossible. And, Mr. President, I would like that the chairperson of the committee tells me that my dream can be turned into a reality. Thank you. I would like to give the floor to Honorable Ali Awadallah Ali from Sudan. Thank you, Mr. President. I would also like to congratulate the Speaker for an excellent presentation, and I would also like to congratulate the committee for the hard work that they did and for organizing this workshop. We said that electronic governance is achievable, and they spoke about the experiences of various countries who are already using e-governance and how this can be done in our countries. And there are some countries that use e-services in education, health, and other areas, e-trade, e-commerce. And I think it's time that the African continent is able to offer these services online as well. And we have started in terms of our government to offer this in terms of creating portals where information can be obtained, where e-services can be obtained. And these portals facilitate communication between governments and the people. And this is if the portals contain information that is pertinent and that interests the people. And information can be categorized and made easy to access. And in terms of the services, there are services where you can make easy payments, and this will facilitate relationships between governments and the people. And even in terms of the parliaments and the structures of government, we recommend that e-services be used to reduce the use of paper, etc. Thank you. I would like to give the floor to the Honourable Paramount Chief Baikur Kanabaro from Sierra Leone.
Je donne la parole à l'honorable.
Give the floor to the Honourable Asitu So Diawara from Senegal. I give the floor to the Honourable Jacqueline Muhangire from Rwanda. Jacqueline, you have the floor.
President, first of all, I wish to thank you, Mr. President, and the entire Bureau of Pan-African Parliament to facilitate this workshop on this important topic. I also wish to thank the chairperson of our committee for the excellent presentation on behalf of the committee members. As we all know, the importance of science and technology is fundamental for a knowledge-based economy and economic transformation. Mr. President, as we are moving towards a world where everything will be online, this requires everyone to be mindful on how to deal with it. Just to share one of the experience of my country, on the One Laptop per Child program, this program has shown that the introduction of technology in primary school, it allows primary school students early access to computer skills, early access to computer understanding and knowledge on specific subjects like science, languages, and social sciences, online research. Digital transformation can really help in efficient and effective service delivery, be it in education sector, in the business sector, in the e-commerce sector, in healthcare, in the fiscal sector like fiscal declarations, in the governance in general. Mr. President, through our regional economic communities, member states should be encouraged to adopt a common regional telecommunication framework. For example, adoption of a one network area and share the benefits, for example, of a fiber optic. It can cut the financing investment. Member states should also continue to share positive steps in this new development of information and technology for an efficient and effective economic transformation. There is urgent need for African members to have a global policy and to harmonize our legal framework and the regulatory frameworks. As parliamentarians, we should continue the advocacy in increasing awareness and capacity building in collaboration with different stakeholders in this sector of ICT, information and communication and technology. Mr. President, allow me to also to join my voice for my colleagues to thank the administration of PAP for the improvement in PAP administration, for the submission to members online through the online of documents some days before the debate before the House. This last 2 weeks, I think we received a document from Mr. Jose Mangwanda some days, 2 days or 1 day before. I think we should encourage this.
1 more minute, Madam MP.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think we have no choice. As it has been said by the chairperson of this committee, Africa, the penetration of ICT is high from the foreign countries, but Africa is still lagging behind. This was a workshop it was a kind of test, but it is not the end. We will continue join our efforts to explore this sector in order to see how we can really transform African economy and really to share the benefits of this motto for one voice, one Africa, one voice. Thank you, Mr. President.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I would like to give the floor to the Honourable Hashim Idris from Sudan. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would also like to thank the chairperson of the committee and the committee members for their hard work. This is a very important theme, and it has become inevitable that we all make efforts, whether we like it or not, to transform the way we operate and move towards making technological progress. And even if in the report they say that Africa is lagging behind in terms of e-governance, we need to ask our governments to create strategies to put e-services and e-governance in place as soon as possible so that we can catch up in this field. And in terms of technological means, we need to use e-governance and the importance of e-governance to put pressure on the government to put these services in place. And we need to use these services. Some use these e-services as a means of war in terms of depriving certain members of their community and their society from certain services and from access to these e-governance services. And we have to move forward in this respect. I would like to give you an example. When we deprive governments or we impose sanctions on certain governments for decades, like what happened to our country, where we deprive governments from getting this kind of technology and sharing it with their populations. But despite all of this, our government managed to put these services in place. As my colleague from Sudan said earlier, we created an electronic network that has managed to contribute to us collecting taxes online and in achieving a 40% increase in taxes collected. Thank you for the extra time, Mr. President. This is why recommendations have been made by the committee, but what are the mechanisms that will allow us to put these strategies in place? The first way is through assistance by the Pan-African Parliament and through the will of our national governments. But I think that a study is necessary on this theme and how we can put these strategies in place, how we can prepare the necessary conditions to put these services in place. And I think that we also need an evaluation of the current situation in Africa. I'd like to give the floor to Honourable Bernadette Lahaye from Sierra Leone.
Mr. President, I'm compelled to take the floor on this very important topic. Being the chairperson for this committee for 3 years and also the rapporteur for this committee for 3 years. That was until my election as Vice President. Mr. President, under my chairmanship and leadership of that committee, we did have a workshop on e-government and e-parliament. It was very well attended. We brought in experts. At the end of the day, we came up with certain salient recommendations. Of course, one of the recommendations was to widen the scope of this conference by making it into an international conference. We did our best to host an international conference, but our best was not good because it has serious financial implications. This was how we decided that this time we will have the same conference, but this time also increase the scope in terms of the resource persons. You can see that somebody was brought from Estonia to also share with us their experience in e-governance. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I would want to recommend to the chairman to look back on some of the recommendations of the earlier workshop. Of course, I can see that we have started implementing some of them. Today, if you see that we have increased our visibility in terms of media, especially of this conference, it was as a result of that conference. We have put in place a senior media and communication officer, which was not done before, and we are now seeing the changes. Of course, we need to do more. And I want to assure that very soon this parliament will go e-parliament. We are working towards the provision of tablets for all members of parliament here. But at least, for a start, you are now having your documents sent to you, sometimes earlier, sometimes a bit late, based on also challenges of this parliament. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, for you to go e-government and e-parliament, you have to have certain basic imperatives. Most African countries don't have those imperatives. These are some of the imperatives. You must have communication and IT strategy. Most parliaments and most countries don't have strategy. You must have energy that is reliable. Africa still enjoys less than 10% of energy. We must have
1 more minute.
We must have our fiber optics up and running. We must ensure that we migrate from analog to digital. We must upgrade our ICT equipment to the state of the art in order for it to carry or to take us through. So I want to say that it is important. We, in this parliament, have been implementing some of the recommendations. But let us, I agree, still strive to have this international conference that we decided to have and we still have not had. It is important. We can mobilize the service providers in ICT, the regulatory frameworks, and all of them so that they will all put some money into this international conference. It is in the interest of all of us to have this international conference. So I want to thank the chair for this meeting for having carried on some of the recommendations of the previous workshop, and I stand to say that I'm ready and willing for us to give all the support to this committee so that we can have that international conference, but also please go back to our elections so that we can see which ones have been implemented and which ones needs to be implemented so that we can add it to the recommendations and resolutions that you have proffered, which are very good. I thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to the Honorable Abdul Razak Said Namdas from Nigeria.
Mr. President, first, let me not sound very pessimistic. I want to say that we have a very, very big problem in our hands, and I'm saying it very seriously. But let me begin by giving you a quotation from one of our African leaders who says that where the modern world is moving to the moon, Africans are yet to get to the villages. This is to explain to you the quantum of problem we have in Africa. And I must tell you very sincerely, I'm sorry to say it, that for us to have any change in e-governance, every decision we take in the parliament, whatever decision we take, it has to be, we have to have the political will of our head of states and presidents of our various nations. In Africa, 60% of our leaders are within the ages of 70 and above. They are not even electronic compliant. Some had their educations by cramming. Some got books. They are yet to even agree that this electronic governance is in order. And sincerely speaking, until we involve the youths of this nation, of Africa, in governance, we will continue to debate here, organize workshops, travel to USA, go to United Kingdom. You will come back and you will not have, most of our leaders, to be sincere, even political leaders, our elected, how many of us have Facebook accounts, have Twitter, how many of us can even use the computer? I want to say, and I'm very serious, that for us to move forward as a continent, we have to give education, e-governance, computer education at all levels. ensure that our youth participate from primary schools to the universities so that people can be actively involved in e-education. I have been a journalist for quite over 15 years, and I know what I'm talking about. I know for sure that even when you meet some leaders, they don't even know how to operate ordinary handset. They will rely on their aids, this computer. So we don't even have secrets in Africa. Because whatever our leaders do, all their aides are aware of what is happening. So these are issues. But I believe that hopefully in future we may be able to get there. But we have to start very well. Like Doctor said too, we have the issue of power. We need to work on power. In Africa, in my country too, we are very populous, over 170 million people. I tell you that less than 30 or 40 million people have access to power. And this is very serious. And this, I think, until our leaders address issues like this, we will continue to remain here. Thank you to say that in PAP, I saw in the last budget that there is an attempt that some of this obsolete equipment will be replaced. And I hope when I come next session, I will operate electronically. Thank you and God bless you.
Merci.
Thank you very much. I would like to give the floor to the Honourable Kerian Santos from South Africa.
Mr. President, when I'm listening to my colleagues speak, I realize how privileged I am to be a member of Parliament for the South African Parliament. Because we, when you're talking about some of the problems, I honestly cannot identify with it. Because in the fourth Parliament, we had already started the whole e-governance system. The Parliament of South Africa has a fantastic website. All members of Parliament are profiled on that website. The policies, the legislation, everything is there, and we refer to ourselves as a people's parliament. So our biodata is there, what we say in Parliament is there, it's there for the public out there to view. We also have what is called live video and audio streaming. So anyone from any part of the country who has got good signal, good internet, or access to a cell phone can listen to the debates live. Now, when South Africa went the e-route, we realized that many of our senior MPs didn't even know how to switch a computer on. So a separate ICT unit was set up in Parliament to help every single member of Parliament to set their computer up, to teach them how to use it, and how to send an email, how to receive an email. And we have a help desk, so if anything goes wrong, you just phone your help desk and they will either guide you over the telephone or they will come and do it. We also have a video conferencing facility, so it saves on costs if members want to be part of a committee and you can't all fly in just for the day. So we have a video conferencing room, and via your computer you can then Skype and do what you need to do. One of the speakers earlier referred to how much of paper we have, and we're going to be having a debate on climate change this afternoon. And I think we must do two things in this Parliament. I'll bring it up later in the debate. One is our carbon footprint. The other is how many forests do we use every time this Parliament sits. So it's good that we've started receiving our documents. I hear members saying we need laptops. If your Parliament hasn't provided for it, maybe the Pan-African Parliament should look at that. But before I conclude, lastly and most importantly, the Pan-African Parliament has got to come up with a social media policy. As you well know, people
One more minute.
Thank you, sir. As you well know, people have Twitter accounts, they have Facebook accounts. But when you're a member of Parliament, you are no longer have a private view. Everything is public, and you're either a member of Parliament representing the Parliament of the country, or you live in, or you are the Pan-African Parliament. Then what you tweet And what you put on Facebook has got to be appropriate. It cannot violate the code of conduct or the policies of this Parliament. So I think it is imperative, Mr. President, one of the recommendations that was made, that we add that the Pan-African Parliament comes up with a social media policy. In conclusion, Madam Lahai, you're talking about an international conference. Let's start with the needs analysis here first. Rather than inviting someone from Estonia, find out what the needs are in this Parliament and then design a conference to address those needs. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. To give the floor to Honorable Debo Akanda Ignace of the DRC.
Honorable President.
Honorable President, thank you so much for the floor. It is quite difficult to make a comment now after the brilliant comments and remarks that have been made. However, I should like to add my grain of salt to this debate concerning new information technologies. I have heard about the internet, intranet, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, but Mr. President, we need to find out what the needs are. We need to also look after forecasts and do forecasts of what our needs are. The vision for tomorrow is leads to the fact that it is imperative to think of people who live with disabilities. When we speak about intranet and internet, we are talking about people who can see properly or who use glasses to see. But what about those who are visually challenged, people who live with disabilities? What are we going to do about these people if today at the Pan-African Parliament and out of solidarity with these people, what are we going to do about them if they are visually challenged? We really need to think about these people. That is African solidarity. That is a matter of humanity. I should like to conclude by suggesting, Mr. President, and I am delighted to hear that the chairperson of the Committee on Transport no, it's not a Committee on Transport, it's the Committee on Gender Equality, Youth, and People with Disabilities. I should like to suggest that we should amend this by saying people with disability, by saying people living with disabilities. Thank you very much. Thank you, dear colleague. Please allow me to echo what has just been said in this debate that is of utmost importance. First of all, I should like to ask the clerk's office to send this report to each and every one of you. You will read it. It is not a confidential report. It is a report on the situation of media at the Pan-African Parliament. And the report starts following the request of Honorable Roger Nkododang, the President of the Pan-African Parliament. Mission of the African Union spent 4 days here from 12th to 16th of February. The objective of the mission was to assess the situation in the Pan-African Parliament and to see how we could integrate that within an e-conference system. It's not a very long report, but the first conclusions that were reached in the report were that this chamber does not allow us anymore to adapt modern instruments. because the instruments that we have are obsolete. The report also had the objective of putting up screens here to monitor speaking time and also to install an e-voting system. This work was supposed to finish 15 days before this session. We have had a pledge of 300 laptops from the World Bank, and this pledge was supported by the African Union Commission, and that's why the mission came here. But the people who came here said that it would be very expensive to do this work here because we are in temporary premises. That is not the problem. The problem is that these installations that were suggested by the World Bank via the African Union, we did not receive them on time because the team said that 30 days were needed to install all the necessary equipment. The Bureau really wishes to decrease the volume of paper that we are faced with every day. And I should like to ask the clerk to send you this report to see where our discussions have led us concerning the Internet and e-services within this Parliament. Secondly, I would wish that during our next session that the Minister Jean-Louis Borloo will tell us about the follow-up of Energy for All in Africa project. I say that because when we speak here, we don't really realize that what is a major handicap for us is energy. I am not ashamed to say when I am in my village, you cannot reach me. There is no electricity. So it's a real problem for us. I think that the basis of this is to focus on energy and electricity. Mrs. Kellyan has just emphasized the fact that we need to learn how to use computers and instruments and equipment. When I was at the summit, there was a laptop in front of me, and even to use it myself, I had a few problems because all documents are on the laptop. So I should like to echo Honorable Kellyan to highlight the fact that training in this field is so, so important. I wanted to say that information technology and communication technology is of utmost importance because if we had e-voting here, we would gain an enormous amount of time. And finally, I wanted to talk about the Panama Papers. I think that it is thanks to information and communication technology that these papers have come to bear. And there's also the issue of voting. In my village, I cannot vote electronically, but perhaps those who have this facility could do it. And even e-voting necessitates the training of citizens. So I think that the debate today emphasizes the fact that we are here and we need to learn, and we also need to bear in mind future generations, train them so that they are able to use all necessary equipment. I wanted to say that the Parliament is on this, and I wanted really to call upon everyone to accelerate the installation of this equipment. We need to buy 2 screens, and very soon with that we can be able to control the speaking time in Parliament. Only 2 screens. We can start with that. So, dear colleagues, this report is very important for us, and since there are no further comments, I would like to invite Jean-Louis Borloo at the next session so that he can give us an idea of how far this project has reached. During the last summit, the president of Guinea-Conakry was the spokesperson for the follow-up on the energy project. So I think that they are working very hard with the Minister Jean-Louis Borloo, because when I was in Europe recently, we had a conference on this subject and we raised this issue with the European Parliament so that the European Parliament could force states to contribute to this endeavor. Thank you very much. And now I should like to invite Mr. Daouda Touré to respond to the issues raised. Honourable Touré, you have the floor.
Je voudrais commencer par...
I should like to start by saying to Honorable Abdul Razak from Nigeria that we must not be pessimistic. We will get there. You know, when a cellular telephone system started in Africa, we never thought that we could use this technology in our villages. You can see that many activities take place in villages using GSMs, and the youth today use the internet more and more, because what is referred to as the old people, that's us, we can be sometimes overwhelmed by all these developments. I should like to thank everyone for all their contributions. And I would like to attempt to respond to the few issues raised and concerns mentioned. Let me begin by responding to Eugene Falak-Bakar from Liberia, who says that we must be an example in the Pan-African Parliament. Yes, if we do not consider this issue seriously, we will be lagging behind. We have already missed the Industrial Revolution, and we cannot miss the electronic revolution. If we miss it, we are dead. And we will just be here passive, and we really need to do every single thing possible to advance this development and do advocacy. Start with yourselves within your national assemblies so that all necessary equipment and systems can be an example. This assembly must be an example, and we need a little bit of time so that the Pan-African Parliament becomes an e-Parliament by 2017, Mr. President. Let me respond to Honorable Dognon, who was speaking about his dream. And I think that this dream is possible. You know that good things are always difficult to materialize. But at the African Union, for example, we speak about regional interconnection. Maybe some of you know about it. I know that the Vice President worked on that, on interconnection between Central African countries. The World Bank, ADB, IUT, and the Islamic Bank have financed projects on interconnection, with also optic fiber project. The idea was to better implement interconnection within Africa. In Central Africa, they have what they call Central African backbone. And the idea is that all countries of Central Africa must be connected and have access to the underground network. And that is done from the Cameroonian cities. There was approximately $400 million dedicated to this project. There was also the RCIP project for East and Southern Africa. $424 million was invested for these kinds of projects in these countries, and I think that Mrs. Bernadette Lahaye has worked on this project as well. And then there was $300 million invested in 2011, and that is 8,000 kilometers of optic fiber cable. You know that Morocco and Tunisia have their own systems. And I think that Africa is doing something, and we deserve to be optimistic. I cannot answer everyone's questions, but one computer per child, that was mentioned. That is what we should do. Africa has resources. Our countries have resources. We only need political will. We can give a computer to every child in every school. We know that corruption needs to be eliminated, and if that happens, we could give computers to children. But 70% of Africans live without electricity, and this is what we must work on. Africa's electrification must go together, hand in hand, with the access to e-services, to the e-services environment. It has to go together. In certain villages, you cannot even buy airtime for your cellular phone. So we need to rethink this e-environment. We need perhaps to use renewable energies, solar energy. We have solar energy in Africa. We need to come up with strategies that must force our countries to go to the electronic revolution. And I said earlier, if we miss that electronic revolution, since we missed the industrial revolution, it is a matter of survival. I thank you very much for all your significant contributions to this workshop report. Thank you. Thank you very much. The general debate is now closed. I submit the report on e-governance, and no observations, no comments. The report is adopted. The clerk, you have the floor to tell us about the third item on our agenda. Thank you. Presentation and debate on the report of on African Union education policy. I invite Honorable Abdou India, Chairperson of the Standing Committee on Education, Culture, Tourism and Human Resources, to make his presentation. Thank you. Mr. President, ladies, gentlemen, members of the Bureau, ladies and gentlemen, chairpersons of caucuses and committees, representatives of management, dear colleagues. Mr. President, on behalf of the members of the Committee on Education, Tourism and Culture and Human Resources, would like to thank you and congratulate you for what you are doing so that the Pan-African Parliament becomes more visible. The same congratulations and thanks go to the members of the Bureau and to other colleagues who strive so that the Pan-African Parliament can develop further. Having said this, the report that I'm going to present to you would actually be a synthesis on the education policy within the African Union. And you will allow me, Mr. President, before I go to the heart of the matter, to inform you on the organization of the methodology developed on this strategy. Indeed, following the proceedings of the committee, we have a new dynamism, a new energy in the way in which we practice. Along the way, we have set up an organogram with 4 elements. And this is how the focal point was created. And for each element, culture, tourism, human resources, and education, colleagues were given the responsibility of handling those specific subjects. And we also spoke about basic education for early childhood and primary school, and also higher education, professional training, and informal education. And this has allowed us to have all our colleagues participate. I know that we are a very dynamic committee. We were led to contact power structures regionally and internationally. The African Union and the Commissioner in charge of education received us, and this meeting was a wonderful opportunity to see how partnership could be undertaken. Mr. President, dear colleagues, it is with that in mind that in my capacity as chairperson of the committee, I had the privilege of leading a delegation comprising of members of the committee and representatives of the African Union. And this has allowed many exchanges on this very innovative project. In terms of the coherence of strategies, the members of the committee wanted to find out how well-founded this initiative was and what was the role of the Pan-African Parliament in the implementation of the project. This is important for the Pan-African Parliament as well as all other national assemblies in Africa. What is the use of the continental strategy? What impact can it have on target groups? Which approach do we need to use? And what is the role of the Pan-African Parliament? The Commissioner gave us all information that we needed so that we gain a better understanding of this matter. He indicated that the continental education strategy objective is to improve training possibilities. And the general context of the strategy has in mind the 2063 agenda and bears in mind also the World Forum on Education that took place in Korea in 2013. So the first question that we need to consider is why do we set up this continental education strategy. As you know, ladies and gentlemen, education in Africa as a strategy is a poor relative in budget lines of our countries, despite many resolutions that have been signed at an international level. You understand that the funding of the education sector is insufficient in most of our countries. And also the real impact in the development policy is not adapted to the needs of African populations. We have insufficiency in qualified teachers. We have programs that are not adapted to our realities. In practice, everything that is done is really coming from a colonial influence. This needs to be reflected upon, dear colleagues. As far as infrastructures are concerned, there is a major deficit limiting performance possibilities. Many of our countries have sanitation issues. Let's talk about the girl child. And this is an important matter in our countries, in our schools, in our training centers. You know as well as I do that the girl dimension is extremely important, and I think that efforts should be made on that subject. So, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, those are the many reasons that led the African Union to start working on this continental education strategy. So what is the objective? The continental education strategy has to better elaborate the training possibilities from preschool, primary school to university level. Particular emphasis is given to science and technologies. The innovation in sciences is crucial to develop our countries. Infrastructure also has a very important place in this strategy, and that has had a negative impact on the evolution of target groups. The strategy is going to favor the concentration on the needs of education and training, and also taking into account national budgets. We feel that the state and parliamentarians, because they are policymakers, would be the first mechanism through which implementation will take place, which means that countries have to rethink strategies bearing in mind the continental strategy on education. We also have to bear in mind the development of human capital, because education in general needs an environment of peace and security, gender equality as well. This is also to be considered. All of this to say that with this new policy of the African Union, many countries will have to adapt, and it will be difficult. That is a certain fact. The implementation strategy, what do we need to do? Faced with this picture, the African Union has set up an approach, a consultative approach, involving technical and financial partners. 3 important phases were elaborated upon. Consultation with experts and partners coming from our own countries. You know that we need to call upon national and international expertise. There is also different sessions that have to be organized. The AU must go to different countries, visit all the ministries and departments to create awareness campaign for this mechanism. The third thing concerns the presentation of the national strategy that will be taking place during the Summit of Heads of State and Government. To increase the chances of success, this has been started by President Macky Sall of Senegal. And given what I have just told you, dear colleagues, the Committee on Education, Culture, Tourism and Human Resources has the following recommendations. 1, encourage all standing committees of the Pan-African Parliament to have non-statutory meetings outside of PAP to participate in the visibility of our institution. Elaborate on appropriate strategies so that they can allow us to strengthen the role of standing committees of the Pan-African Parliament and also organize meetings with the African Union and have an inventory of all activities of programs and projects of stakeholders. This would help standing committees to develop further their work program. Encourage the signature of Memorandum of Understanding with stakeholders in order to improve future collaboration. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, members of the Bureau, dear colleagues from the committee that I chair, I would not like to end without congratulating and encouraging colleagues who are members of the Committee on Education for their determination, for the fact that they have gone beyond the call of duty, and for their capacity to listen. If we have reached this level today, it is because we have had solidarity within this committee, and without that, nothing can be done. So, dear colleagues, I thank you very much. What I can say as well is that this continental strategy is a good excuse to review and rethink our teaching and training systems, because there are so many things to do in our countries. Earlier, our colleague Dauda said it. There is the integration of ICT in our education system that has to be in the package of the continental strategy. So education is cross-cutting. Everything that we do here, education has a part in it. So once again, thank you so much for listening. Thank you very much to my colleagues, members of the committee. God bless you all. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The general debate is open. I have a list of 18 speakers with me. The first speaker is Honorable Zalikatu Diallo from Guinea-Conakry, Honorable from Sierra Leone, Honorable Nigres from Kenya, Honorable Veronica Natalian Matamo from Mozambique, Honorable Ali Dousanfo from Burkina Faso, Honorable Mustafa Ergandi from Egypt, Honorable El Sayed, Egypt, Honorable Abdulrazak Said from Nigeria, Honorable Setaye Melaye Zazu from Ethiopia, Honorable Dauda Toure, Côte d'Ivoire, Honorable David Ernest Ngale from Tanzania, Honorable Bashir Ali Mohammed Batani from Sudan, Honorable Marie Mediatrice from Rwanda, Honorable from Ethiopia, Honorable from Ethiopia, Honorable Ali Awadala from Sudan, Honorable Martin from Côte d'Ivoire, Honorable Sanam Kulitalu Oscar from DRC. 19 speakers are lined up. I give the floor to the first speaker, Honorable Zalekato Diallo from Guinea-Conakry. Honorable, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. President. I wish to start my statement by congratulating the speaker, Honorable Diaye from Senegal, for his brilliant presentation. By the same token, I wish to congratulate him on the reforms carried out on the Standing Committee on Education, Culture, Tourism and Human Resources since his appointment as chair of the committee. In my humble view, the policy of the African Union in the area of education shows the political will of our continent's leaders to revamp education, which is a key sector for development. Of course, some headway has been made at the level of countries in varying degrees, but there has been some headway thanks to the programs of the World Bank, particularly with regard to education for all, to keep girls at school. So some progress has been achieved, although we still face tremendous challenges. That's why the strategy of the African Union is timely. But the provisions made, in my humble view, are always the efficiency is not really guaranteed. The objective of the education of our young people is to provide them with jobs. The first question I would like to raise is the following. Is training in line with market needs? This problem is causing a greater migration in the Mediterranean, because this is a problem. Youth do not have visibility when it comes to their future. So we need a synergy between the ministries of education and employers, especially banks, which can provide young graduates with loans to set up their own businesses, and in this way we can fight against unemployment. The aim is to meet their need for a first job. Thank you. Thank you, dear colleague. I give the floor to Honorable Dr. Bernadette Lahaye. You have the floor, Madam.
Speaker, Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I just have a general comment to make on this presentation and for the benefits of every committee in this House. We see that this report is a non-statutory meeting of the committee held not in the Pan-African Parliament here, but held in Addis Ababa. And because this meeting was held in Addis Ababa, the committee had the opportunity to meet with all the divisions within the Human Resource and Education Commission. And I am of the view that they were able to have value for money. I remember that we have held 2 extraordinary meetings in Addis Ababa. And during those meetings, a day was set aside for all the committees to meet with the AU commissions that are aligned with their committee. That gave them the opportunity to meet with all the departments, to exchange information, and to reach a common understanding. As a result of that, some of the commissions were able to invite some committee members to international conferences, which maybe PAP will not be able to sponsor, but they could sponsor. And that also created the opportunity for some of them to come to PAP to make periodic presentation on the status of their department and give the committees up-to-date information and also facilitate the exchange of information on a regular basis. So I just want to doff my hat to this committee. Mr. President, maybe we need to also continue with that tradition of having some of our extraordinary meetings in Addis Ababa. But let me also end that there is a big resource in South Africa that we are not using. We should also be working with the committees of South Africa that are aligned, South African Parliament, that are aligned with our own committees. That way, we also have access to the ministries and departments that these committees oversee. When we did that with the Committee on Energy, we were able to break a lot of grounds because we worked with the South African Committee on Energy. We were able to have conferences sponsored not by us but by them. We were able to visit energy services. They were able to set exhibitions for us. And even as I speak, that initiative between the Energy Committee and the Energy Committee of the Pan-African Parliament in South Africa is going, and it's a very good initiative. So we have the resource here. With very little money, working with the committees of South Africa, aligned with our committees, we can also do much. So I just want the Parliament to encourage that. We also use the resource that we have in South Africa. The South African Parliament is a big resource. I wonder how many committees are working with the committees in South Africa Parliament. It is important. If we cannot go out to work with outsiders, let us use the resource we have here. They have a lot of experience in committee work and parliamentary work. We can also benefit from that experience. I thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I invite Honourable Madam Kellyan. From South Africa can actually help us with such meetings. We thank very much Mrs. Kellyan. I give the floor to Honourable Mabona from Kenya. You have the floor, Honourable.
Mille Grace.
Honourable Mele Grace.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank the chairman of the committee for a very excellent report. Mr. President, today my comment will be very brief, especially in relation to education in Africa. But first of all, I just want to take this opportunity to say that as a woman, I am very proud when I look in front of you and I see 3 women seated. It talks to power to African women, and it talks to the need to further emphasize on education for the African woman. Mr. President, I just want to say that I would want to link this especially to the comments that we've said earlier on our presentation, especially on e-government, that, Mr. Speaker, now we cannot speak of a world in terms of education without thinking of e-education. And Mr. President, I'd want to say that I'd want to encourage our governments on 2 issues. One, on the issue of e-education, but on the other issue of empowering girls and empowering our women, so that even as we are talking about linkages, whether it's at the AU, in terms of AU policy, even if you are talking about linkages with countries like South Africa, but let us think about our own countries and the need to empower our young girls and our women, because it is changed. It is said that if you empower a woman, you empower the whole world. Thank you, Mr. President.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Honourable Veronica Natalian Macamo from Mozambique. Honourable, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson, Mr. President. For the first time, I'm addressing this session, and I would like to salute all the colleagues and yourself, Mr. President, for the work. Excellencies, the future of our continent and our people depend on education. There are no doubts about that, and the system investing in education is to invest in the future of Africa. It is to guarantee that tomorrow Africa will be prosperous and stronger. and our resources will be duly exploited because our human capital will be better prepared. Excellencies, our strategy must imply to create the basis for our sons to defend the values of peace, harmony, and social respect, the respect to other human beings between men and women. If we give our kids our culture, we educate for the inclusion, political, social, and economic policy to become a reality. To have a quality education, we have to invest in teachers, infrastructures, and the betterment of conditions of the process of teaching and education. We have to invest in schools to guarantee that the environment is better for the students. And in this way, we avoid the abandoning of studying, and we avoid the young girls to leave school. In Mozambique, our effort is huge in this area. More than 7 million of children and young people are representing little more than 1/3 of the education in Mozambique that have education and go to schools in Mozambique. The education has received a special education. I would like to say that from 93% of people couldn't read, now we have 43%, and the education in the fight against the
para ensinar aos nossos filhos o saber fazer.
Literacy continues. So the teaching in Mozambique starts in the first classes, and it's free. The distribution of school books is also free. And Africa must give more resources for education for the future generations to have a better future. Thank you very much for your attention. And thank you. Merci beaucoup, Asante Sana. Mais minuto. I said that for your attention, I would like to thank you. Thank you in various languages. And thank you very much to all.
The floor goes to Honorable Mele Grace Akutu from List. I wish to extend my thanks to our colleague, Mr. Honorable Ndiaye from Senegal, for the quality of his presentation. I have a comment to share with you. I'm not going to go back to what my predecessors said. I simply wish to indicate that education in Africa is more general than technical. You know that if education is not in line with the reality on the ground, this has an impact on the job market. This also means that the natural possibilities of Africa will mean that we'll have to rely on foreign expertise. My observation here is that some African countries have well-renowned schools which can enable African children to learn. Here I wish to launch an appeal so that we can have this solidarity in our continent, so that Africa can train its own children and meet the needs on the ground. I thank you, President. Thank you, dear colleague. Now I give the floor to Honorable Mustafa El Gendi from Egypt. Honorable, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, I come from a family where the father and the mother are teachers. I also come from a country where education is something very important. It's been important for 7,000 years. For us, education, as our poets say, is like air. We need it to be able to live. Therefore, the will is very important. The will to educate children, to send children to school, is very strong. The will also of the country to educate a whole nation is very strong, although very difficult. It is difficult, obviously, to educate a whole nation, and there is a strong will to educate people, so that when these people vote, they know how to do this. So the will is very important. In Egypt, we have had two revolutions. One of the demands of people is education, and free education. We can have schools where we learn nothing, and we need people to have a private tuition for their kids, so we have some kind of parallel education. I'm going to say what we have in our Egyptian constitution. This constitution makes it mandatory for the government to allocate 4% of the national budget to education. Allow me to read this in Arabic. This is Article 19. Education is the right for each citizen, whose aim is to build the Egyptian nationality, protect identity, and lay the foundations of a scientific approach in developing skills. The state is committed to allocating 4% of the budget of GDP to education. This can increase to meet national standards. The following article talks about university education, where we talk about 2% of the budget. We, in our constitutions, education must be marked in terms of how much of the budget should go to education. And from that percentage, we will be able to know whether our governments want to provide a good education, or whether they prefer their people to remain illiterate and therefore easier to manage. I thank you very much. Now I give the floor to Professor Al-Sayed from Egypt. Thank you, Mr. President. Since I'm taking the floor for the first time, you would give me some additional time. I extend my thanks to Professor Abdou Ndiaye for this important presentation. This is the first time I attended the proceedings of this committee. I hail the democratic spirit of that committee. Very briefly now, I wish to say that what is required is to ensure that our educational strategy is developed on a participatory basis among the member states. It should not be simply limited to the Pan-African Parliament or to the Education Commission in Addis Ababa. How can we develop this strategy, and how can we make it accessible to decision makers in our country so as to commit ourselves to it? More importantly, we need to unite our African vision, a vision for the entire continent, where education is a part of this vision. How can we use education to promote development in our continent? As a professor of history for the last 40 years, what can help us in this regard in developing our vision of African Renaissance through education, I can say that Professor Zerbo, through UNESCO, prepared a history of Africa in 8 volumes. In Egypt, we summed up these 8 volumes into 4. How can we sum up this work so it becomes a reference for African Renaissance? It gives an idea about the struggle for independence and the end of discrimination, and it gives an idea about how Africa will develop between now and 2063. This will help our youth to look into the future instead of wasting their lives in the sea. This will help us, and we need to help ourselves before others can help us. As indicated by my we need to see how we can develop this idea of allocating a specific percentage of GDP to education. I read many reports. When there is a need for funds, people usually use the funds allocated for education. Obviously, our states have programs that can be useful to other states, and we need also to use expatriate knowledge. I know that in Canada we have 3,000 African university rectors. Thank you very much. Now I would like to give the floor to Honorable Abdurazak Saad Namdas from Nigeria.
President, first and foremost, I want to commend the brilliant presentation by Honorable Abdou Diaye. It was a very brilliant one. I want to also join the previous speakers by re-echoing the fact that as parliamentarians, there is need for us to ensure that our national budgets, that attention is given to education. If education is made a priority in most of the governments across Africa, I think we will be able to move a step forward. Because if you look at some of the government's policies, education is not given a priority. In fact, it's not even number 3. So I think we need to move forward. But all the same, I said we are quite doing very well. I want to say that in Nigeria, too, we have these issues of shortage of teachers. And shortage of teachers is not just about teaching. There is need for us to have professional teachers who know what they are doing. But because of the unemployment thing, people who don't even have the background of education will just be employed to go and teach. And at the end, you just have students who come out with fine grades, and yet when you give them aptitude test, you find out that they are not doing quite well. So there is need for us to work so much in the area of teachers. In my country, this year, our new government has decided that 500,000 teachers actually will be employed, so that at least they can build the education sector. And if other governments can do the same, I think that will enhance the quality of education across the continent. And secondly, there is need for us to emphasize in the area of science education. In my country, too, science education is made free, so as to encourage our students to go into science education so that we can have technology and move forward from there. And we also have, even at the state level, because since we operate a federal system, we have the national, the state, and the local governments. Even the states are making sure that pupils and students are given free feeding, so that once you have a child that is hungry, I'm not so sure that he can listen to what is being said in the class. So free feeding is also something that is also helping. And I would like other countries to also adopt that. Finally, I want to plead with us politicians. Please let us not use our youths for political toggery. Because if you go to most of these African countries, you find children that are supposed to be in schools, politicians use them as stocks in order to achieve their selfish end. And once these children are exposed to some little money, they forget about education. And what they do is to go to toggery. Some of the issues we have, like in Nigeria, that we are having the problem of Boko Haram, is because when you politicians arm youths to go...
1 more minute. 1 more minute.
Thank you. After you get power, you forget about them. And since they realize that you have used them, they also use the gun against you. So I think that it's need for us to please look forward that we should not use our children for toggery. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to the Honorable Sitaye Minale Tizazu from Ethiopia.
President, and I thank you for the presenters. And I would like to appreciate the themes which is chosen by the Bureau and the committees, which are very good and very interesting, like agriculture, education, land. All these are very important for us to discuss and to move some ideas and even to advise all our countries when we come back. After saying this, I think education is, in my belief, it is a human right. Everybody has a right to learn, to live, to do as a human being. So most of African countries are doing based on education. But my worry is about its quality, the quality of education. As we are back in many aspects of the world, we are doing fastly, but we are missing the quality of education. We are eager to go fast, but we miss a lot of things to bring quality education. Quality education means different infrastructures in the school, the quality of teachers, and the professionality of teachers. As my colleague said from Nigeria, I share his ideas. It needs professionality, and it is full infrastructure. So I think the quality is a very important thing that we have to consider. And as a parliamentarians in our respective countries, when we approve budget, we have to give attention for education, because education is the key to pass through anywhere, any level. So I think in my country, Ethiopia, we have a strategy that 70-30, 70 for technology and science, and 30% for social science, because science and technology is very, very important for countries which are developing countries like Ethiopia. So this is one thing, and the other thing, it should be on the aim or the objective of job creation. We have a lot of graduates in our respective countries. I believe that it is not only in Ethiopia, it is in many African countries. But our education is not aimed to create job. They are simply graduated and they are flowing throughout of our countries. So this is not helpful for our countries as a whole in Africa. So education policy of African Union has to concentrate and has to give attention for these very important issues that is the quality.
1 more minute.
Thank you. And it should be lined with the creation of job. After that, everything will be gone on a proper way, and we can improve our respective countries as a whole. We can improve Africa. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And now je donne la parole.
I would like to give the floor to the Honorable Daouda Touré from Côte d'Ivoire. Thank you, Mr. President. To paraphrase my compatriot, I would like to talk about a dream. I've had a dream of having a common legislation that imposes on countries on their on their way to globalization, to afford more of their budget to education and training. But not any kind of education. It's an education that responds to social norms, all the while respecting international standards, so that we can be competitive in a world where Africans need to make a good showing. But there are lots of challenges, and we need to combat these challenges for our children, because our children, for the most part, are not prepared to respond to the needs of manpower, resources, knowledge in the world. And this means that in our countries, a lot of the time, multinationals come to our countries, and our youth are not properly trained to be able to participate in their projects. And if you visit schools in our countries, you will see that often our children are studying subjects that have nothing to do with what is required in the world, with the demand that is current in the world. And there are very few youths who are capable of building transistors or doing basic engineering. All of them want to do politics or be in big white-collar jobs, because there's not enough emphasis on blue-collar work. We need to take jobs in hand. We need to ensure that our youth are getting proper technological education and training. I give the floor to the Honorable David Ernest Silende from Tanzania. Honorable Silende, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I congratulate the information that has been brought before us. But there are some questions that we should. What kind of education does Africa have? What kind of education does Africa want? The second question that Africa should ask Africa, what is the priority? Education, water, health, infrastructure, and what is our priority? And the third one that Africa should ask itself. We have been very good at elaborating plans. We have good plans, but the implementation of these plans is very good. And even now, when you read at this report, you think that Africa in the next 5 years will become. But you will see that even at the end, we will finish our mandate, and others will come to speak about the same thing that we are talking about today. We should have a commitment on what we have in our plan. We are very good at speaking, but on the question of commitment, we are not there. Another thing that Africa, we don't do them. The first presentation was on electronic governance. We want to go to the education. When we have not been able to manage our informal education in Africa, even being a tailor, even entrepreneurship, we are failing. We want to go further when we have not managed these small The problem with Africa, we have not invested in research. When you discuss education, you should know what is the problem. How many people do not know how to read and write? How many people need to know how to read? And we must base ourselves on research. We know the problem, but we don't know the problem in detail. That is the problem of Africa. Another point is that there's respective countries, we don't invest in education. Let me say the truth. Even for all that, education is the only way that you can unite poor and rich man's. And education is only that it can push forward Africa. We can invest in industry. If we do not have educated Africans, investors will come from Africa will remain subordinate, will remain as laborers in their industries. We should, Mr. President, we must believe that in order to change Africa, we must invest in research so that we can know what is necessary for a point and to make sure how we shall go ahead. Let us also prioritize our people. Malaysia has succeeded because they invested in education since 1980 until 2021. They had education, and then they had BRN. And we go there we send our people to learn from Malaysia. Why can't we invest in such a point? Excellency, Mr. President, let it be spoken to the members of the country. When you come with the education strategy, you should tell us, after all these ideas of the parliamentarians, what next? I'm worried that we will speak, and then we shall say that the report has been adopted. We shall put it aside, and nothing will come. We would like to know, after the adaptation of that report, how are we going to implement the ideas in those reports? Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. To the Honorable Bashir Ali Mohammed Al Batan from Sudan. Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to thank the chairperson of this committee for an excellent report. The problem of education is directly linked to our development in Africa, and it's linked to the use of our human resources in Africa. Without good education, there will be development and there will be no progress. Result, this committee on education that organized this joint meeting mentioned that there are a lot of challenges that prevent the education systems from achieving their goals. And I would like to share the experience of my country, Sudan, in this regard. Currently, Sudan has adopted measures for free basic education for all children of school-going age, boys and girls. And in terms of the educational environment, especially in rural areas, in order to close the gaps in education, the Sudanese government included the contributions of the population and the local government in order to put measures in place to improve education in the rural areas. And the state also put in place various institutions to supply free food to poor children to help them to concentrate at school. There are institutions that provide this free food, especially in rural areas. And to ensure that poor families are sending their children to school, we give food for education to certain households to make sure that these households are in a position to send their children to school and not make them work instead of going to school. In terms of providing education to nomadic populations, we have also taken measures in this regard. And in terms of educating young girls, we have made great strides in Sudan, and you will not be surprised to hear that we some of the top students in our education system have been girls. What we are trying to do now is accelerate the current programs and putting in place the continental strategy in our country, because we know that this will be to our benefit. And we are also putting measures in place to ensure that more budget is contributed to education, particularly primary education. And we will encourage professional training as well, more professional training. Thank you. I would like to give the floor to the Honorable Isabeliza from Rwanda. Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the floor. I would also like to thank the presenter on an excellent presentation. Mr. President, during this session, many speakers have spoken about the problem of youth unemployment, whether they be educated or uneducated youths. And we've also spoken about the immigration of youths to European countries. But I think that we have the solution in our hands on this continent without having to rely on external partners. Mr. President, in my country, in Rwanda, about 5 years ago, our government set an objective to create employment for 200,000 youths per year. And today, we are at 145,000 jobs per year. And this can be in both private and public sector. And we have put strategies and mechanisms in place to achieve this objective and to deal with this problem of youth unemployment. And Mr. President, we have also increased the number of education and training centers. We've created technical schools and technical institutes. Each year, the Federation of the Private Sector Federation holds meetings with the Ministry of Trade and Industry, the Ministry of Labor, and they organize competitions for the youth, prizes for technology, and for all those youths who come up with a project that can be realized in the technology field receive a prize. Others are recruited by institutions as engineers, for example. Mr. President, today we have the issue of public transport, and we had a solution that was proposed by a youth in one such competition. But there are so many youths who have good ideas and good projects, who leave university sometimes with degrees and cannot find jobs, who are sometimes exploited in the workplace. However, we are investing a lot to help as many youths as possible to succeed. We have conducted studies to be done, and we believe that it is high time to motivate all our youths and to motivate our governments to create jobs for youths. Thank you very much. I give the floor to the Honorable Tekele Tesama from Ethiopia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also thank the presenter. As it has been said that education is a matter of preparing generation for the future. In this regard, it's the most important item that we have to invest in it. Unless and otherwise we invest in education, if there is mistake or if we are wrong in education, there will be a mistake in every sector of human endeavor. In this regard, the development level that we see today in the advanced economy and in the developing economy is the difference between education and human resource development. So I think this is very important to discuss and to make contributions in the continent. In relation to the education challenge, there are things that are mentioned in this report. For instance, insufficiency in teacher competence, and sanitation in schools, and the curriculum design that is influenced by the colonialists or Westerns. So the education of Africa must fit for the purpose of Africa. It must not be influenced by the European or in any other world. Since we prepare our future generation for our future development, we have to see our problems. Education by itself is a key for solving problems that we face. In Africa today, we have so many problems. We are talking about electricity, we are talking about infrastructure or transport and so on, so road and so on, and engineers, health, medical doctors and so on. In this regard, if we invest more, or if we design our curriculum regarding to the purpose of our problems or our facing issues, let's say for corruption, we have to teach our people. Excuse me. I also want to join my predecessors who talk about resource allocation. In Ethiopia, especially in the state level, we have 25% of budget is allocated towards the education. And in the country level, at national level, more than 15% is allocated to the educational level. Unless and otherwise we invest in education, we lose our human resource development in all the sectors. So that I think it's better to invest more budget to education. But when we come to the strategy of continent, or continental strategy of education, I don't know how we can coincide continental strategy to our national education strategy. In this regard, I think it's better to see how member states are coinciding and adopting this continental strategy to their national educational strategy. So that I think it's better to know all the member of parliaments, the continental strategy of education, to adopt it to our own parliament or to our national education strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I would like to give the floor.
Raru Kundo du Rwanda.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm passing. Thank you very much. I'd like to give the floor to the Honorable Amusuvi Kapadonu from Togo. Thank you, Mr. President. I very carefully listened to all my colleagues who spoke about the problems in the field of education, and I would like to add my 2 cents. I think we have already said it enough in this chamber that education is the key to all development. And in Africa, I'm not teaching you anything by saying that ignorance and illiteracy are things that we know very well. And when we wish to develop a continental education strategy for Africa, I wonder what is going to be the philosophy that is going to underpin this continental strategy, because all education has to be based on a philosophy. And what is this continental philosophy that we are going to base our continental education strategy on? Somebody said earlier, or asked rather, how we're going to adapt this continental strategy to how we're going to adapt our national strategies to the continental one, and vice versa. If we have a philosophy that we all subscribe to, then that will assist us. It is a process. We need to decide what is the final product that we want to achieve. And if we haven't established that, if we don't have a clear education philosophy in this continent, then we're going to just waste money and time. That is why I want to really put emphasis on this idea of an education philosophy. And then I would like to ask for clarification. On page number 7 of the report, the committee said that the continental education strategy would have 16 objectives, and I would like clarity on exactly what those 16 objectives are. Also, colleagues have said that we should not just speak here, talk and not do something afterwards. We need to have a specific timeline and calendar as to when we're going to achieve our goals. Thank you. I'd like to give the floors to the Honorable Ali Awadallah Ali Said from Sudan. Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me this opportunity. I would like to congratulate the Education Committee for the meeting they had in Addis Ababa, and we think that it was a very good step towards achieving our goals in education. I'm not going to be very long because I think that my colleagues who spoke before me have already said a lot about the education sector on the continent. But what I would like to say is that Africa is also full of skills and talents that could be used. And in order to be able to really use the human resources that we have on the continent, we really need to focus on education, and particularly e-learning mechanisms and other long-distance learning mechanisms that have been mentioned by other colleagues. And another colleague indicated that learning, long-distance learning via television and radio can also be very beneficial for individuals and classes. This is why we really need to do more in terms of ensuring that everybody can access education, and for us to be able to really benefit from all the resources, skills and talents that exist on the continent. And we also need to include African culture in our education curricula. And this in order to also enrich the quality of education. We mustn't forget our African history and culture. And in terms of developing human resources, I think that the solutions rest in education. Thank you. I'd like to give the floor to the Honourable Yao Martin Bohou from Côte d'Ivoire. The last on my list is Olutu Oscar, Honorable Olutu Oscar from the DRC. Professor Olutu. Mr. President, thank you very much for giving me the floor. I think that we have sufficiently congratulated the chairperson of the Education Committee. And this is my chairperson, and this is my committee, and I'm delighted about this. And I would like to thank everyone who has listened to my chairperson and to our report. In my contribution is around three particular points. First of all, there's an observation and the current status of the situation, and then a suggestion. So the observation is that during the chairperson's speech, he said that the continental strategy is an opportunity to correct the problems that we face in the education sector. Second observation, after having listened to the debate today, we can deduce that African solidarity must help Africans to train their own trainers. And from these two observations, I would like to add some concrete information from the field. Research has shown that from now until 2025, in general, the African countries are capable of achieving international standards by training a very large number of students and passing many degreed people and doctoral students. And in terms of student ratios, international standards demand that we need to have a much higher number of professors and teachers per student, which we don't currently have. So what are we going to do to close these gaps? And that is my concern. The solution, I think, has to be realistic. Instead of hoping for solutions to fall from the sky, I think that we Africans need to find solutions in ourselves. I think that a solution would be that at our level, we have professors, we have ex-deans of universities, and so what I would like to suggest is that we create a network of experienced professors, teachers, deans, etc., so that we can have a network where any country who needs assistance can ask advice and help from this network. They can have professors and teachers and deans come and teach in their countries. And I think that at using this system, we can at least train a small group of trainers that can then go on and train other trainers. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the chairperson of the committee to respond to the debate.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, first of all, I should like to thank all colleagues for their contributions and for the kind words addressed to us. There are questions that have been asked and also contributions that have been made. It is true that education has an utmost important place in society. But today, if we are faced with a set of problems, it is partly due to political will. You know that everything that has been said here depends on political will in our countries. It's true that often we bestow the responsibility of this to our governments, but we have also, as parliamentarians, a big share of that responsibility. Often in our countries, what happens, well, we represent the people, but there is also complicity. We are accomplices with the executive. We approve whatever they say. And when we are in a certain context, then we ask the real questions. So we can't have our cake and eat it. We have a big share of responsibility in this situation. It is often said that there is cause and effect. We have to have a mechanism. And we haven't been able to achieve that because somewhere it doesn't work. The national budgets do not take into account education at the level that it is required. So there are gaps in practice. So let us talk about practice. In fact, what happens in the definition of programs? It is the state that suggests through its decentralized structures what to do. Leaders actually make proposals on behalf of beneficiaries, and it is the opposite that should happen. The conclusion is that, generally speaking, our programs are not adequate, and the real concerns of our children are not really taken into account. Because in the thought process, the children were not involved. Stakeholders, whomever they may be, teachers, professors, etc., are not really taken into account. Their opinion is not requested and it's not considered. So all of this leads to the fact that we are in a situation that is not very encouraging. Colleagues have asked if training corresponds to our programs. No. In fact, no, for the most part. It is because of what I was saying earlier. It is the executive, it is the state that does everything. But if in education and training we had given the required place to grassroots stakeholders, whether it be parents, teachers, and those who are taught, I think that training would correspond to programs. We have spoken about funding issues as well. We do not need to repeat that. There is a very weak allocation of the budget to education. Education is the basis of development. If we want to succeed, we must give education the importance it deserves. In terms of the Bretton Woods institutions, what are we to do? What is going on in our countries? It's the IMF and the World Bank that are imposing certain practices. So we need to close those gaps and open the door to a new thought process. I think it's a very important component of all this. So what do we need to do, actually, after having adopted this report? We have planned well at the Committee on Education. This is why we said earlier that each member of the committee is responsible, and there's a specific task that was assigned to each and every member of the committee. We told the Commissioner this, because if you consider us as extras, it will not work. We need to participate in all the different stages of development. And when I say we, I don't only mean our committee, I mean also the Pan-African Parliament. So through the President and his team, we are going to suggest a plan so that you are properly informed on all the different stages of this process. But we need to understand that the continental strategy will depend on the political will of our heads of states and our countries, because it is our countries who are going to make proposals based on the African Union standards. So each country has a share of responsibility in this continental strategy on education. In terms of education, in terms of implementation, I think that we will do everything that is possible. I think that more or less those were the issues raised that I have responded to. I really enjoyed the proposal of my colleague Dao Toure when he spoke about legislation. We really need to think out of the box. We need to make our presence felt at a global level. And I think that we should give everyone the possibility to participate in the thought process, because no one has the monopoly on knowledge. So, dear colleagues, these are the few responses I wanted to give, whilst acknowledging the very important contributions that have been made. Thank you very much, Mr. President, once again, because you have given us the opportunity to do this important work. Thank you. The general debate is closed. I submit to the Chamber the report of the committee. No observations, no comments. Adopted. We have reached the end of our proceedings for this morning. The meeting is adjourned until 2:30 exactly this afternoon. Thank you.